Okay, right. Well, this is the final session of our parish education program. In fact, you should all have a you should all have a mortarboard and a roll-up scroll, particularly those who have been with us all the time. And I would single out Nicola and Jenny because you're graduates of the whole parish education program. Of us have dipped in and out, but you've been amazing.
We should
But
have
this
a certificate of some sort.
I think we should. I think we might even do that. And we'll give it to everybody because it's a bit divisive otherwise. But it's been an amazing year, actually, of the parish education program because we've done so much. We've done pilgrim, and we've done baptism, and the baptism bit for me was really was an eye opener. And we've done pilgrim, and we've done the Lent course, and then we've done pilgrim, and we've done weddings. And in the pilgrim, we've done the Eucharist, and we've done the Bible, and we've done the church and creeds as well. And we've covered a great deal of territory. So amazing stuff. And your contributions throughout have been really, really interesting and helpful. So thank you for all of that. So tonight's the last of our sessions on marriage, which is also very much about relationships in general. And we are looking at forgiveness. And I looked at the materials, and the materials are very much about recovering from infidelity, and the big question about, can you ever forgive somebody who has committed adultery? And there's actually no standard answer to that. Some couples manage to do that, and some couples don't. And for some couples, it's always a memory and something in the back of the mind. And for others, it's something that they've rolled on from, and it's no longer an issue. But what I thought rather more interesting, actually, than simply talking about recovering from an infidelity, would be to actually think about all of the ways in which we need forgiveness in our relationships. And I don't want to just stay within the marriage relationship at all. I want to think about family relationships. I want to think about friendship relationships. I also want to think perhaps about work relationships too, and think about the ways in which in all of those, we recognize that we have done somebody wrong, either through commission, through actually wanting to do them wrong, or through omission, failing to do something for them that we should have done for them. So, and I also want to think about can we make up for those acts of commission or omission, and I want us to be really imaginative about how we might make up for what we have done or not done. So, for instance, my communications with my brother and my sister regularly break down because we're awful. The three of us are absolutely dreadful at actually staying in touch with each other, and none of us are more sinners than the other. But the three of us are really bad at it. So, what might we do imaginatively do to prevent that happening, and actually to make up to each other the fact that we are so bad at communicating, and we know we are. The three of us know we are. So that's the sort of thing I'm looking at. And what we're going to do, we're going to begin with, hello Tracy, how are you? Turn your microphone on.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello. And right, and what we're going to do, we're going to start with something that we've looked at before, which is not that, though that's fascinating. It's this I'm after. Can everybody see that? So this is Psalm 51. Now, Psalm 51 is used on Ash Wednesday. It's the big penitential psalm, and we trot it out every time we feel that we need to do something together that is vaguely penitential and asking for God's mercy and forgiveness. But it's, in a way, we misuse it, we overuse it, because actually it's a psalm that's generated by a very, very specific event, which is the terrible act of adultery and actually how would we describe it? Disloyalty by King David against his very, very loyal follower Uriah the Hittite. And it's a terrible, terrible story of misuse of power. And, you know, it's one of those crunch points in the Bible that makes you think, well, this person has really, really not just blotted his copybook, but he has surely offended his country and his God, to the point that it's irrevocable and there is no way back for him. And Psalm 51 is his act of penitence. So what we're going to do, I hope me talking over it has allowed you to find something a bit bigger. We're just going to look at this, and then we're going to read this, and then we'll revert to I'll stop sharing, so because we don't need that. We don't need to be sharing for the rest of the session. So I'm going to ask you to read 2 verses at a time. So I will begin with the first 2 verses, and I'll get Tracy to read the next 2 verses. Joan, if you would do the next 2 verses. Nicola, if you would do the next 2 verses. And where does that get us to? Then Jenny, if you would do 9 and 10. And
what psalm is it? Can't see it.
Psalm 51.
Okay. Where are we now?
Right. So I'm 1 and 2. Tracy, you're 3 and 4. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Nick, no, was it Joan? You're 5 and 6. And then Nicola is 7 and 8. Jenny is 9 and 10. Sylvester is 11 and 12. I'm 13 and 14.
Yeah.
Then 15 and 16 is you, Tracy.
Yeah.
And Joan, 17 and 18. 19 and 20 is Nicola.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Have mercy on me, O God, in your great goodness. According to the abundance of your compassion, blot out my offences. Wash me thoroughly from my wickedness and cleanse me from my sin.
For I acknowledge my faults, and my sin is ever before me. Against you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight. Joan?
5. I'm reading it from another Bible, right?
That's fine, that's fine.
Truly I was formed in evil, and in sin did my mother give me birth.
Okay, Joan, hang on. Can you read the verse before that, and then
5.
read that verse again?
Verse 5.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the one I just read.
No, you didn't. You read verse 6.
Oh, no. Truly I was formed in evil, and in sin did my mother give me birth.
What's the verse before that?
Against you only have I done wrong.
Yeah, there seem to be different numbering system.
Ah, okay.
Mine
All
is
right.
the same as John. Mine is a
So-
nice.
So, Joan, thank you very much. Who's after Joan?
That's me. Behold, you desire truth deep within me, and shall make me understand wisdom in the depths of my heart. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow.
Let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones that you have crushed rejoice. Hide your face from my sins and blot out all my iniquities.
One more.
Pass me not away from thy presence, and take not thy Holy Spirit from me.
Thank you. Is it me? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Give me again the joy of your salvation, and sustain me with your gracious spirit. Then shall I teach your ways to the wicked, and sinners shall return to you.
Deliver me from my guilt, O God, the God of my salvation, and my tongue shall sing of your righteousness. O Lord, open my lips, and my mouth shall proclaim your praise.
You have no desire for an offering, or I would give it. You have no delight in burnt offerings. The offerings of God are a broken spirit, a broken and sorrowful heart. O God, you will not put from me. Jeez.
O be favourable and gracious to Zion. Build up the walls of Jerusalem. Then you will accept sacrifices offered in righteousness, the burnt offerings and oblations. Then shall they offer up bulls on your altar.
Fantastic. And I want to just draw your attention to a few things. This verse 18, the sacrifice of God is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise, is a verse that is very familiar to us because we use it every time we say the Book of Common Prayer, morning prayer, or when we sing evensong, we use it as well. So that's something I wanted to show you. And the other thing was to point out verse 16, O Lord, open my lips, and my mouth shall proclaim your praise, which is also part of the evensong and also the Matin service in the Book of Common Prayer. So the Book of Common Prayer, as it uses these phrases from the Bible, particularly from this bit of the Bible, Psalm 51, it's all a penitential. It's all a penitential liturgy. It's all about saying sorry. And the other thing to point out to you as well is where it says. Against you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight. Now, King David here is making the point that any sin is actually a sin ultimately against God, but he perhaps overdoes it, and he talks about this only being a sin against God. Well, it isn't. It isn't. And that's a bit of particular blindness on David's part, I think. There are people who have been damaged by his actions, not least the wife of Uriah the Hittite, who he's taken adulterously and had a child by. And every action of sin, yes, it is a sin against God, but it's also a sin against other people. We are social animals. Sin is always going to be about other people as well. So David doesn't really think about reparations to anybody other than God, but he should be, and we should be as well. So it is, all sin is against God, but it is also, it has effects on other people, and it has effects on ourselves as well. So that's great. I'm going to stop sharing. And I just want to repeat what we're doing here. We're thinking about any sort of relationship, whether it's a whether it's a marriage relationship, or it's a friendship relationship, or a family relationship, a work relationship, maybe even something as distant as our relationship with our country, or not distant, but as idealistic as that. How have we how have we done something that's hurt our community, and how might we make reparations for it? Maybe we even go as far as thinking about our relationship with the environment and how we aim to put things right. So that's what I'm looking for. And as I said, be as imaginative as you can. And that is the limit of the material that I have got for you. So if it's down to me, it's going to be a very quiet session, and I'm sure it isn't going to be down to me because you're all going to chip in.
Okay, where do you want us to start within that?
Well, I mean, you could talk stories. One thing to say, I think, is that's quite important, is that this is published. It is on the internet, so you don't want to be too specific, and you certainly don't want to talk about other people unless you have their permission to do so. So this isn't anything like Chatham House rules. So you just have to be careful.
Well, in terms of friendship, I have a lot of friends around me. I don't always keep in touch with them, but we do talk to each other. And I find that if somebody has said something to me that I don't like, you know, or have done something that would actually ruin the friendship, first of all, I don't deal with it straight away, but I think on it. And then I'll make arrangements to talk to whoever it is and say, this is what you, or rather how I felt about what you said, what you did. And I know this is likely to cause a rift between us, but I need to tell you. And I would leave it like that. I would leave it for them to actually work out whatever it is they've done and find within themselves whether they want to forgive, want to start a friendship, or whatever, want to keep the friendship going. So I'd leave it to them. But if they come back and say, well, yes, I apologize, I really didn't mean that, and so on, then we can carry on talking. But sometimes it could be a distant talking then, you know, not very, when I say we could talk to each other, but maybe we wouldn't do as before.
Or is that permanent then, or is that actually that you've got to gradually rebuild trust?
I think it'll probably it's more like that. It is more like that, yes. I try never to make anything permanent if I can.
Sure. Who's moving around? Stop it. Yes, great. What about other people? Is that familiar to other people as well?
Yeah, I think not to immediately react is a very good advice. You need time to maybe to think about it, to pray about it, and then you know, can honestly sort of approach to the person, or you know, write messages.
What about anybody else?
It's really difficult because you can't share the details. Because I do have stories, but it does involve other people. So
yeah, just be careful. Yes, I just want to pick up something that James said, which I think is really crucial. And it's not an original thought. It's actually something that people are often advised to do, particularly actually by Relate and other relationship counselors, to actually say, this is how you are making me feel, rather than to say, you have done me wrong, you know, what you said was offensive. But to say, what you said makes me feel like this. And that's really important, isn't it? Because it demonstrates, I think, not just that there's an objective fact, but also what that fact is doing to the person. And I think it helps the other person realize just how great the damage they've done is. So it's not just what you said was a lie, but actually what you said has deeply hurt me because it isn't true and it's made me feel this and this and this.
The better way of in that you don't make you don't accuse the person. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're actually saying, this is how I feel after what you've done or said. So you're actually saying, telling that person how it makes you feel, without actually saying, well, you did that and I did that, and you know, rather say that.
Because in the end, I think we have a deeply held belief in the kindness of the other person, don't we? And part of what we're doing is saying, this isn't like you. You know, you said this and that isn't like you, and this is how I feel because you've suddenly become quite strange to me, and I don't feel the same about you that I normally feel. Yeah.
That's really interesting because, hold on a minute, sorry, my washing machine.
Oh, the joys of being online. Yes.
Oh, mate, sorry. That's really interesting, right? Because sometimes when people say things to you, you think to yourself, has that person wanted to say that to me for a long time? But they've just got up the courage to actually say that to me. And so sometimes that makes you stop. And for me, it makes me stop and think about what they've said to me before I respond. And then my natural reaction is to say sorry, walk away and think about it, and then think to myself, hold on, what were they talking about? And when I really ruffle through it and then think to myself, well, actually, this is bigger than that or smaller than that, and I don't ever go back. And I think there's this thing about me not being honest sometimes about what people have truly done to me, or accepting what people say as well sometimes, because sometimes people put a pressure on you and then you think just like, oh my gosh, I'm like that. But then, and then after reflection, after you spend time really reflecting on it, it's like it's a two-sided thing. But yet still, there's always one. Well, okay, so I've had a friendship where I always felt like I was the one apologizing. And you'd have these weird conversations. And at the end of the conversation, it'd always be that she was right. And I'd go away thinking, nah, she don't know what she's thinking about, you know. But it was about how it was like, how would I tell her that? And how could I tell her that? Because she was so wrong and strong that after a while, I just gave up the fight.
Yeah.
And eventually, I mean, she was a friend that a lot of people had said to me to be wary of, and I wasn't, because I said, this is my friendship, not your friendship, and whatever's happened with you, blah, blah, blah. And actually, we ended up not being friends for 10 years. because of things that had been said and I didn't check it out properly.
Mm.
So there's also that bit about, can I say, it wore me down?
Yeah.
Until I just got to the point where instead of me saying something and talking, I just shut up and just stopped talking to her.
Mm.
And I can remember exactly when it happened, where I was and everything.
Yeah, and that is difficult doing that. And within yourself, you can't really be at peace because
No,
you haven't spoken out and says, this is what's happened, this is
No.
what's caused it. Because once you're actually able to say that out, it comes out of your system. You no longer feel,
Yeah.
well, it's, I say you, but
Yeah.
we should no longer, well, I don't no longer feel
Yeah.
anxious or that angry or whatever with that person.
Okay, thank you. That's very profound. I think that the thought of well, any conversation is a transaction, and you know, you talked about transactional analysis in one of your sermons, and it's with the whole business of fault can be very, very a very, very fine balance. So that and of course then you've got things like transference happening and you know, the wrong that people recognize that they have caused, they push away and plaster it on somebody else. So there's a lot going on there. Yeah. We've had the sin of neglect. I talked about it, but I think also Joan, you talked a bit about it, that you know, sometimes friendships break down or they become cool for a while because actually we neglect to keep in touch with people. And we have so many ways of keeping in touch with people, and more and more and more of them, it seems. But it's still possible to neglect somebody in the family or in the friendship group, isn't it? It's ever so easy to do that.
Sorry, can I pick up on that? Oh, I forgot, that's what I wanted to say. So, but it's that. So I go to funerals, and I meet people at funerals, and they're like, "When did we last meet, Trace?" I'm like, "At a funeral," and we say, "Oh gosh, we must stop doing this. We've got to organise things. We've got to start doing things." And the next time I meet them is at a funeral, because there's very few weddings and baptisms that take place now where people are doing big things. But then I met a girl I worked with in Tower Hamlets many years ago on Thursday, and it was her uncle's funeral I went to, and obviously I never knew that about that he was her uncle. And we were like, she was like, "Trace, I've not spoken to you for a long time. We're doing all this by messenger. You know, we've got to keep in touch. We've got to stay together." And I was like, "Do you know what? What you've just told me is that I need to start calling people I've not spoken to in months. Like once a month, start calling different people, because I've got lots of people on my phone line. Not all of them are people that I'd call, but there's lots of people on there that I should have called. And now I've called somebody and we've been on the phone for like 2 hours because so my thinking that actually, that friendship had died or whatever hadn't. It just needed to be reignited. So that's what I went to say.
But don't underestimate the value of funerals, because you know the anthropology of funerals is fascinating. So what's a funeral for? Yes, it's for honoring the person who's died, but it also has a real role in actually bringing people back into contact with each other. So the only time I meet the whole of my family is at funerals. But we know that and we accept that, and we pick up with each other where we left off, which was at the other funeral. So and it's actually quite joyous. So the funerals have always had that role, and it's important. And of course, weddings do as well. All of the occasional offices have that role of bringing people back together for a moment, so that they stop being atomized, they stop being little separate units, and they get the chance to swap information. And I remember I've got I think I hope she's still alive, a distant cousin called cousin Lavender, who's not my cousin at all, but cousin of one of the members of my family, who backed me up against a wall at a wedding, yes, a wedding, and interrogated me about my brother and his girlfriend. And you couldn't have done that at any other point. It was just Aunt Lavender knew the rules, and she knew that at a family gathering like a wedding or a funeral, she could do precisely that.
Yeah, I never thought of that. That's quite true.
Well, yeah. So when you do a funeral, celebrate the fact that actually you've got people in the room who wouldn't normally be in the room together. Yeah, it's good. So that's not about neglect. What about other things that happen in relationships?
In work relationships, you could have things that's going on. You might find somebody who's quite forceful and could be a bully, and that wears you down, and it could lead to you actually getting up and leaving the job altogether, because you just can't. And if there's no one there quite often isn't anyone you can go and talk to privately about that within the workspace, so it doesn't sort of go back as a horror story or this one or that, but you need to be able to talk it out within that workforce.
Yeah, whose responsibility is that?
Well, basically, I think it's your responsibility at the start. If things is going wrong and it's not happening, it's not working properly for you, you're being bullied, you need to be able to say something, and you need to be able, so it's your responsibility. And that's why I say have somebody to talk to, so that you can work things out.
Do you, I don't know what your observation is in the church where it happens. What there seems to be above the person who is being bullied, there seems to be a complete silence, and very little help gets offered. My observation would be actually this is the responsibility of those who have pastoral care, for those who have pastoral care, like myself and Mother Tracy, and they don't fulfill that responsibility very well or very readily, and I find that hard to accept, I have to say.
Could it be also that if you are actually observing all these things happening, but if you're not, then it's about someone to bring it to your attention so something can be done? Yes, but what happens, let's not carry on too long on this one, but what happens if it is brought to their attention and there's a few warm words said, but that's it, and nothing more is done?
That happened to me, didn't it? One morning, Sylvester and Joan had gone off on their jaunt somewhere. Father Tom was off doing something else, and it was me doing service. I had someone unwelcome. Someone decided to go and tell that person what they had done to them. the welcomer went home. There was no Michael that day. There was no Sylvester. I had no welcomer. And so, yeah, the welcomer went home. So there's been no conversation. It's just been that person said that to that person at that point, whenever it was. Then that person decided that morning they were going to share with that person what they did. That was the end of that for me that week. It was chaos. And so whether they're talking again or not, I don't know, to be quite honest with you. But what happened was shared. But to whose benefit, I'm actually not quite sure.
Okay, but the rest of us are sitting here filling in our minds who those
All the
people,
blanks, yeah?
yes, who the people might be, yes.
Yeah. So it's about people. It's about people knowing that we need each other, and not because you have decided this is who I believe I need, is going to be all that you need. There will always be other people that you need that you just don't identify until that person does something for you, or hold your hand, or gives you a kiss on your cheek, or something like that. And so it's about acknowledging, that.
Yes, I think I agree with that. I think that we are much more vulnerable, all of us, than we accept. And I've seen that. I've seen that at sort of command level in the Navy. People who you would think are sort of invulnerable, but actually aren't, and who clearly have feelings, and it's as easy to hurt their feelings as it is to hurt anybody else's feelings. We all have needs, and one of the important things in relationships is actually recognizing that and thinking to ourselves, is the other person's needs being met? You do get people who are very needy, but also you get people who simply almost refuse to give anybody else any positive strokes or any praise or anything else like that. And that's very sad. It's sad to watch that happening. But they tend to just blunder on without being really aware of what they're doing, I think.
Yeah, I have to admit that I'm not very good at stand up. I think sometimes people are very rude to the clergies, and I think I've observed several occasions. Yeah, I don't know. It's really tricky, and yeah, to say, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't really stand up for you, but I do pray a lot now. I don't know, there are occasions when people are rude to me or whatever, but I think it's important to contemplate about forgiveness and contemplate that whatever we experience, Jesus Christ has also experienced in his time, and that he dealt with it with sort of with love, and died for the people who who have sinned. I think it's very important to reflect on that. But that's why in the church I'm usually quite careful. Whatever offense, that if I can process it myself in my own prayer, I just try my best to process it myself. I don't bring it up, and also, but on the other hand, I have to admit that I don't really stand up for other people who suffered from the from injustice or whatever. And I think it's just you're right. It's hard, isn't it? Because you want to work together with them as we are part of the church, but on the other hand, some of the behaviors we have observed are not quite, you wouldn't see that even in the real sort of work environment, but you can see that in the church. Well, that's why I don't want to work for the church anyway.
Yes, yes. That's very, very interesting. What is it about church communities that actually unlocks the best, but also sometimes the very, actually the bits of us that we would otherwise want to hide away are bad manners to each other. It's sometimes churches just seem to give people license to be very nice and very nasty to each other, almost almost in one after the other. I mean, I think part of what I was talking about on Sunday, the queasiness, that sense of being all at sea, I think you could say that that happens in churches too, and that there's the very best of people and the very worst experience of people almost cheek by jowl with each other. Oh, Jenny, thank you. Your thing about forgiveness is really important, actually, because what we've talked about so far is about experiences of neglecting or otherwise damaging other people, but what we haven't reflected on what forgiveness is and what forgiveness feels like, what it both feels like to forgive and what it feels like to be forgiven. And what you've done, which is brilliant, is actually talk about God forgiving. I mean, we could ask ourselves what it feels like to be God forgiving us. That's an interesting question in itself. But we certainly all know what it's like to receive God's forgiveness, or I would hope we do. What does it feel like to forgive? Nicola, we haven't heard from you. I think we should hear from you. What does it feel like to forgive? Because you deal with children, and children have to forgive each other.
Well, we tell them they have.
Yeah, true, very true, Joan.
I think it depends on what you're forgiving and like how far you are in whatever healing process that you need to go through before you're forgiving. But generally, I think it feels quite a relief to forgive, and it feels like almost like it's the right thing to do. Yeah. Again, depending on the situation, but if you've come to that conclusion of, I've done something or said something that I shouldn't have done, and I've caused distress to this other person, so I think it's important to forgive. But yeah, it can be quite healing at the same time, as long as it's genuine, because you get people that they apologize and you just know that it's really insincere as well. So I think you have to mean it and have done some work yourself as well.
Yeah. And what does it feel like to be forgiven? Anybody?
If you really recognize what you've done, and the person's forgiven you, it feels you feel lighter in yourself and more able to approach the person again with sincerity, if that's the right word.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I talked earlier a bit about strangeness and the fact that we basically have a kindly attitude to each other, and we expect that to be reflected. And when it doesn't happen, we feel that person is strange to us. I think the experience of feeling convicted of a misdoing to another person, or a sin, or whatever you want to call it, is often a feeling of feeling completely out of sorts and feeling strange and just not feeling yourself. And when you are truly forgiven, actually what's happening is almost like you're given back the person that you recognize yourself to be. And it's not in your own gift to do that. It is only in the other person's gift. But it's sort of reconstructing the person that you've always seen yourself as, or always understood yourself as. And the thing between you will always be there, but at least you feel yourself. Do other people recognize that?
Can we continue this next week as well? Because I think there's different levels of forgiveness.
Okay.
I think there's different levels of forgiveness, and there's easy ones, and I think there's ones that we do, or that I've done, because I know that's what I should do, and that I needed to stop judging all of it. But I'm going to say this right, but it makes my sense. But there's truthful forgiveness, like saying sorry, and people mean it. And then there's forgiveness that you look at the person and you realize, well, what are you forgiving me for? Because actually we've never had a conversation about it. We just know that something's gone wrong and we're forgiving each other, but we're tippy-toeing over the problem that we had anyway. And so therefore, our forgiveness is actually, what's that word? Premature. Because actually we haven't even got over the issue after many years.
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, if somebody's saying just out of the blue, "I forgive you," is actually passive aggression, isn't it? It's saying, actually, you're at fault.
Yeah.
But it's okay. I forgive you.
Yeah.
Well, who says? Who says that I'm at fault? And you're right. It's premature. So yeah, okay, all right. So I accept that's one form of what we might call forgiveness. But to be truly forgiven, can anybody else sort of dip into that experience and just describe it emotionally?
Well, if this was September, I might be able to tell you, because somebody's accusing me of having done something that I don't know that I've done, or I might have done unexpectedly, but won't actually say it outright. And so I cannot feel as if I can forgive or accept their forgiveness until I know, like Tracy said, you want to know what you're being forgiven for.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Just in the closing moments of this, what about our relationship with the environment? Very much in the news at the moment, of course. Very important. And our environment very hurt and very damaged by our thoughtlessness and our use of fossil fuels, etc., etc. What is it that we can do? Well, we're trying to get to net zero and all the rest of it, but I wonder what it is that we feels like forgiveness in that context.
I would find it very difficult to say. I will try my best to do what I can do in terms of trying to do some things right for the environment, but yet at the same time, the same way we're trying to be nice to the environment, we're actually causing a lot more damage, even in the way that we think we're doing right, if you understand what I mean. And I'm not quite sure how I feel. Well, I know I don't like it, and I will do my best, but I just don't know if my best will ever be good enough. And I'm sure quite a lot of people will probably feel exactly the same sort of way.
Do you get that experience of watching nature though and feeling blessed by it? And you know, maybe it's just the birds in your garden, and feeling that in small gestures you've done, like putting out bird food or putting out a bowl of water for the birds or for hedgehogs and things like that, that actually there's a healing going on. There's a healing of the relationship between you and nature. I've felt it very deeply these last couple of years when we've let the garden here at the vicarage grow much more wild, and seen many more birds and many more butterflies and things like that. And to walk out into that has felt better and has felt blessed in some ways.
Yeah. Well, I haven't done any of those things, but certainly
It's a case of not doing. It's not, you know, it's because normally I was out there every other week mowing the lawn, and we've mown the lawn once in 12 months. So it's much more about not doing stuff, I think, really. But it's interesting to watch nature recover around you.
Yeah. I think I feel really ashamed of myself. I put plastic grass on my previous garden, and I have already been told off by other Franciscans. And it was, I was just couldn't maintain it. And then eventually, I didn't really do any research about what would happen to the species that live under the soil. At that time, I was just thinking, oh, I can't maintain it, and my husband is not going to maintain it. I'm going to put in the plastic grass, and it's just afterwards I was talking about. I was showing off people my DIY, so, and then they told me actually it was really bad for the nature. Yeah, so it does. Yeah, I feel quite wrong.
That's really interesting. I actually, one of my neighbours has plastic grass, and the plants have gradually spread into this plastic grass and taken it over. So it's actually it's quite naturalized now. It's bizarre, but yeah.
I think it's probably because they didn't put the membranes below the grass.
No, I think
yeah,
you did.
it was quite bad. Well, I don't know what's happening to it now. It's a bit out, and but I think I was once in a seminar. They said on the individual level, to think about the impact to the environment, you really need to think about how you heat your house, what you eat, and how you travel. It's really at this sort of level we need to think about how we are, sort of what we do, the impact to the environment. And I do try to make it up by eating less meat and and I try not to drive as much as I could, but yeah.
Yeah, very important, all of that. Fantastic. Well, now, Tracy sort of talked about next week. Sorry, Tracy, that's not going to happen. This is the last session. So
I think forgiveness, because you've just glazed over it, yeah?
Yeah, I know. You're absolutely right. We have. So what we will do, I promise that we will talk about forgiveness in an early session when we re-meet in September. And Tracy, you're very, very welcome to join us. Nicola is going to continue to join us from Ipswich.
Yeah.
At any point, if on a Monday evening you're at a loose end, if you haven't got a PCC meeting or something, you're very welcome to join us.
At least you don't have Bible studies, 7:30 on a Friday. On a Friday. 7:30 on a Friday.
Yes, and we heard you the Friday.
Then they have prayers at 10 p.m., 10 a.m. on a Saturday. What's their problem? What's their problem with weekends and Friday night? So you're right, I might be too knackered on a Monday. These people. But yeah, definitely, I'll be back. So is this the end till September?
This
Yeah.
is the last.
You
This
know,
is the last bit of stuff.
you know you're not at school, don't you?
Yes.
Times.
I also know that after the fete is a natural marker at the end of the year, and
That's like
it's time to do other stuff. Yes, it's carnival, exactly.
Carnival is we know that's when winter starts. Happy Carnival, that's the end to summer, all the festivities. So I understand. I'll give you a break. Yeah, it was hard Sunday, but yeah.
Good. Oh, it was brilliant though, and I have the results. Yes, right. Thank you. Right, I'm going to bless you. Right. To God's gracious mercy and protection, I commit you. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you peace. And the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be upon you now and remain with you always. Amen.
Amen.